Good afternoon and welcome to Anders CPAs and Advisors for another edition of PPP with Paul and Dan. You know, it's been a while since we've been on, as we've been trying to digest the many changes, the new programs, and of course here at the firm, tax season. So we thought it might be just a great time to back up and remind you of some of the usual suspects. We'll discuss 5 programs quickly, and remember, we have much more detail about them on our website, or you can always go out to sba.gov. Today, we're going to talk about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, the Employee Retention Tax Credit, PPP loans, and the Economic Injury Disaster loans, better known as EIDL loans. So Dan, I'm going to let you take a shot at the first 3.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's nice to get another episode under our belt as we make our way through this pandemic. As Paul alluded to, I'll go through the 3 topics real quick. The first is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. This is the newest program from the SBA to provide funding to help restaurants and other eligible businesses to really keep their doors open as we make our way through hopefully the final legs of this pandemic. A couple highlights in regards to the program. This is essentially a revenue replacement. So the revenue that was lost due to the pandemic is being replaced by these funds. To calculate the grant amount, it is the difference of your 2019 gross revenue less your 2020 gross revenue less your PPP1 and PPP2 loan proceeds. So the difference between 2019 revenues and then 2020 revenues and PPP funds is your eligible grant amount. You can use these funds through March of 2023 on various eligible expenses, which is pretty wide ranging. The portal for this Restaurant Revitalization Fund is opened. It opened on Monday, May 3rd. It opened to everyone that is eligible to apply. However, priority will be given to those applicants that are minority-owned, veteran-owned, or women-owned for the first 21 days. So while everyone can apply now, those groups will get first bite at the apple for the first 21 days, and then after those 21 days, applications from those other groups will be looked at and eligible to receive funds then. This is also similar to the PPP in that it is a tax-free grant. It does not need to be repaid. It is not taxable income, and you still get to deduct the associated expenses paid with these funds. The next is the Shuttered Operators Venue Grant. This program was designed to open and strengthen the group that was really one of the hardest hit throughout the pandemic. A lot of these venues had to really shut their doors entirely. Some highlights in this program include the grant amount is equal to 45% of your 2019 gross revenues up to a maximum of $10 million. So it's a pretty sizable grant that'll certainly provide some cushion for these type of businesses. And again, you can use these funds on a wide variety of operational expenses, payroll, rent, utilities, administrative costs, and really much more. This portal is now open as well, and whether or not you can submit your application now is dependent upon the amount of economic loss you incurred from April of 2020 through December of 2020. The last one I'll touch base on is the Employee Retention Tax Credit. This is something we have discussed at great lengths over the past several months, and want to just bring it to the forefront again. This is an extremely lucrative tax credit for those businesses that are eligible. And to highlight, these eligible businesses are those that saw a significant decrease in revenue in a quarter of 2021 or 2020 compared to that same quarter in 2019. Let's also not forget the other way to be eligible, and that is if you experienced a full or partial suspension of your business operations due to government mandates or orders. Take a good long look at that and see if your business incurred or it was impacted by a full or partial suspension that could make you eligible for this employee retention credit. Again, it is a very lucrative credit. For 2021, it is a 70% credit up to $10,000 in wages per employee per quarter. So it could be a $7,000 tax credit per employee per quarter for the time periods in which you're eligible. This is a credit that you can go back to 2020 and get. This is a credit that you can redeem on an ongoing basis here in 2021 for each quarter in which you are eligible. So it's something to keep an eye on each quarter, because like I said, this is a very lucrative credit that you don't want to leave funds on the table for. Paul, I'll turn it over to you for the last two programs we're going to touch base on for today.
Okay, well, thanks, Dan. Sometimes it seems like that so much has happened, we forget a little bit about PPP 1 and 2. And, we've lived and died this for the past 14 months. And this really was the foundation that all of these other stimulus programs were built off of. So, they're still around. So the good news is that the program did seem to work. There were a lot of challenges, a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of changes. But for the most part, it seems to work, and hopefully it will continue to do that as time goes on. So where are we now in these two programs here? So PPP 1, for all intents and purposes, is over, and you really should be applying for forgiveness. It was suggested early on that many that needed to hold off should. And that was really good suggestions. We were very clear with our clients from the beginning on that as well. It paid off because some of these new programs came into play, and if you would have gotten forgiveness too early, you wouldn't have been able to take advantage of those programs. It also lessened some of the challenges around forgiveness, made it easier, and allowed people to apply for forgiveness that early on they wouldn't have received had they not waited. And that was really a good strategy. But that's sort of over with now, because most loans were funded in April of 2020. And the deadline, really, if you funded in April of 2020, is probably that latter part of July, depending on your funding date. So May and June are really good time frames to get this out of the way now. If you haven't, and you've been working with your banks or your advisors, to go ahead and move forward. We would encourage you not to wait till the end. Don't wait till the last couple of weeks of July and miss that for some reason. So go ahead and get started now and get it finished. With the good news, though, of PPP 1, there's kind of some bad news with PPP 2 is the funds have run out. The last couple of days kind of caught everybody off guard. Certainly banks and advisors were concerned that it may get low towards the end, but really didn't think that it was going to get that low 30 days prior to the program. And I'm not so certain, if someone asked me my opinion, that Congress is going to refund it. I think they'll probably direct more of the funds that are out there now to other programs, but I could be wrong. They may do that tomorrow. You never know. But I think I would just take this stance. So the money you receive, PPP 2, continue to move forward using it. Get your PPP 1 for forgiveness moving if you haven't already, and plan for thinking about PPP 2 forgiveness that probably will be available to you in late fall and early 2022. And last but not least, one that we really thought we forgot about was the EIDL loan program that kind of disappeared. But with the last stimulus package approval, they funded it with a significant amount more than they had before. And right now, as we speak, there's a lot of communications going out to borrowers right now about new funds that are available, potentially up to $500,000, depending on the amount of loss that you sustained. And there is some discussion that they may even try to move this up to $2 million if the funds aren't depleted quickly. Because that was the original EIDL loans for other natural disasters other than the pandemic. But, as I've always said, remember, before accepting these funds, take some time to read the fine print. There are some limitations in there that are important that may hinder your business from growing in the future or expanding. So, if that EIDL is still on your books. So take a good scan of your note. And if you really need the money, then those limitations aren't going to be a bother to you. But if you think your company is growing and moving forward, it may not be the best avenue to get additional funding. So, I think, Dan, we've talked about all these things over and over and over again, but as we all know, things continue to change. So I'm just going to turn it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And hopefully these highlights for the various programs we discussed were useful for everyone who's watching. And keep an eye on all these programs. They're ever changing, ever evolving, and certainly want to take advantage of all the programs that businesses are eligible for. So with that, we're going to sign off for this edition of PPP with Paul and Dan, and hopefully see you soon. Thanks.